On this episode of ITAV, we recorded this one from the show floor of ISE 2017 1 year ago. AVNation did a special about network security and what manufacturers were doing to support network security. 1 year later, we get an update. All that and more next on the ITAV show.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
ITAV is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like Kramer Electronics, AV Beyond the Box. This is ITAV, recorded Thursday, February 9th, 2017. International Security.
This is the ITAV show with AVNation. We're coming to you from ISE 2017. And today with me I have Cash Katia. Is that right? That's
yes,
right. He is with Connect Pro. Next to him is Paul Zeeley with AMX. And we've
Harmon.
Harmon. That's right. Let's make sure we get that correct. And then also joining us today is Tim Albright. Welcome, everyone. How are you today?
Good. Great.
Doing well?
Yes.
Show's going well for you so far?
So far.
Yeah. This is my first ISE, so this has been quite an experience taking this whole thing in. Done the Infocom thing, the NAB thing, and this is quite a behemoth.
It is. I ended up at a place that I never knew existed yesterday, and
in the halls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, I've missed a large portion of the show for years because I didn't even realize this wing was there.
No
Well,
kidding.
they added two this year.
No, it wasn't one of
Okay.
those. This was hidden back in behind the digital signage, and there were all these areas that I didn't even know existed.
Oh, I found a tent, like off on one side with drones flying around in it and stuff. It was kind of interesting. Well, cool. Well, let's kick it off today. One of the first topics of discussion is something that's kind of eminent and come up that we have to ask the question on is to you, Kat.
Yes.
There's a story put out. Who released the story?
There's two or three different sources.
Two or three different sources that had come out that a competitive manufacturer had come in and seized some product, or is that? Can you comment on that, or
It's a great question, but I'm unable to comment right now.
completely understand that? But you understand we had to ask.
Yes.
Yeah, for
I agree.
obvious reasons. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No
Cool.
comments.
No, totally get it. I'm sure that more information will come
Yes.
as time goes by. So let's talk about security. The real reason we're here today is talk about IT and the convergence of AV and IT. About a year ago, there was a AVNation episode where we talked about possible AMX vulnerabilities at the White House. It was a story that was released by Ars Technica. What have we learned since then? Since that release?
Well, it's always interesting about vulnerabilities at the White House, as sensationalized. AMX is in a lot of places, including the White House. But it was actually a vulnerability, and it's the sort of thing that happens very often where practices that were acceptable in the past and code bases carry forward over years and years and years, and features don't get removed. When you're looking at updating and doing things, you're really concentrating on what's going in, and you don't always do a good review about what should come out. And so there was a backdoor, an engineering maintenance port that was discovered by a security researcher that was actually hired by one of our large customers to do penetration testing and verification on all these systems on their network.
So it wasn't an actual breach, it was just a discovered vulnerability.
It was a discovered
that's what it was.
vulnerability.
Okay.
And the sensationalist went and said, "Where is AMX?" and found a picture that AMX had put on of some AMX stuff being used in the White House, and said, "Oh, here's the good place to go." Not really paying attention to the other, 70,000 companies that have AM, or organizations that have AMX equipment. And I would be hard-pressed to say that one of the interesting things that came out is how much silence there was among the competition about that, because in reality, it's something that not just within the AV company, but companies like Philips, Siemens, everybody gets caught up in this trap.
Right.
You know, there's only so much due diligence you do, and I thought it was very interesting that they said, "Oh, the competition's gonna make hay with it." I said, "No, they're gonna be sitting like the kids in the back of the room who didn't do their homework, going, 'Don't call on me, don't call on me, don't call on me.'"
Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, they, took it as a warning to do that sort of thing, as I did, and we did within our organization, and not only did we correct those faults, including putting software releases to products going back to everything that ever had an Ethernet port into it. So we issued firmware patches to it going back to products that were shipped in 1997.
Right. Wow. That's proactive.
Yeah.
That's proactive.
Yeah,
It's not only proactive, it's also costly.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
3 generations of products going back. We issued security alerts and did it. And I had a huge number of meetings with major customers talking about it, and a lot of it is being more transparent, open, understanding, and looking for those things, and going forward. It was especially damaging to us because we had been spending a lot of both money and then marketing effort, and that really working on bringing the front-end security pieces to the levels of security that are required by corporations and governments to go on the system. And here we have this backdoor type vulnerability to deal with.
Right.
But all of those have been cleared. Some of them took a little bit longer than others because of the pieces in. The first vulnerability was cleared immediately. The second one took a little longer because we actually had to not break our internal control. But there were very limited things that somebody could do, essentially control the switcher with the second one. But it goes forward. And overall, there are no known breaches by anybody who's not, doing it in a lab. And while I'm not a big fan of the sensationalized way it was released, I understand that those security research companies have a function, and ultimately it's better for society that these things are discovered and centrally shared through the common vulnerability database so that things can go out. Unfortunately, it just happened to be us that got caught this time.
Right.
But we've joined a great list. There's way more Cisco and Microsoft names on there than there are AV companies, just because they have more products in that space and more research is focused on that. I think I would hate to think for the industry if those guys really started to focus on everything, especially with the growing use of Linux and vulnerable patches and everything else. And so we do keep track of that. We have a very strong, costly set of vulnerability scanning tools, the same types that our customers have, as well as full exploitation suites. So for instance, Dirty Cow, which made big news, taking over set-top boxes, denial of service, taking down DNS, equated in a lot of our customers' minds with our types of products. So we looked in, and we actually did have the Linux kernel sets that were vulnerable to it, but we were able to do a penetration test and determine that in order for them to put Dirty Cow on the box, they would have to have root access, and all Dirty Cow does is give them root access. So therefore, this is not
you can't get root access if you don't have root access, right?
Yeah. So this is not a critical problem on our box, and we're going to fix it. Now we have in our next patch roll-up, and so we've gone in and we look at all of those, and we are able to take steps saying we've got to drop everything and work on this, or this is going to fit into the normal cycle. Because customers also don't want to patch needlessly, and quite frankly, if a large company is doing that due diligence and tracking, that explanation pasted into their response system that says vendor discovered that the vulnerability exists, but there's not a feasible exploit, will be patched, blah blah blah. because ultimately they've got thousands of these things to deal with, and their job is to determine what the course of action is. And if we can provide them with a course of action, everyone has accepted that. And of course, we have to carry through. But we're trying to be not just responsive, but even proactive in finding these vulnerabilities. And so we subscribe to the CVE and test things through. So we actually have those responses prepared in advance. And it's an interesting marketing because I would like to start to publish those, but there's a lot of fear that if we start publishing lists of potential vulnerabilities, that the customers' minds will say, oh, look at them, they have all these vulnerabilities.
They automatically go negative.
Yeah, they automatically go negative, and nobody else is having to publish all these vulnerabilities. But our big customers are encouraging us to do this. The multinationals, Fortune 50, say, oh, that would be the greatest thing in the world. We'd subscribe to that because then we don't even have to worry about it. We just import it straight in, and everything that's going on. So we got to figure out how that responsible disclosure is going to work in this market, because a lot of it's just education and thought about it and moving the mindset that it is IT.
So AMX has learned some valuable lessons through all this, and I think a lot of other manufacturers have learned from that example, as well as other examples that have taken place. Cash, you're a product manager, right?
Yes.
So Connect Pro,
Connect.
I'm sorry, Connect Pro. That's right. Thank you. What steps have you guys taken to, at the early stages of the manufacturing process, to make sure that the products that are being put on the customer's network are secure and safe?
You know, we are hardware manufacturers, so everything has to be from the chip level. And we want to make sure that the chip level has proper authentication. They have the latest DCP or anything like those kind of compliances to make sure when devices and software content is connected to it, it's not vulnerable to everybody else and it is locked. It doesn't have any kind of mechanism that shares or, you know, has any way of intrusion going in from there. So our products mainly, you know, could be anything to do with scaling, switching, or HDMI transmission over IP. Mainly those kind of products that we manufacture. And we just have to be careful from the aspect from where high resolution content is being, being streamed, is being distributed, or signal processed from one source to multiple devices or displays. It has to be secure.
Yeah.
And, you know, any protocol which is out, or the latest ones, you know, from HDMI 2.0 spec to HD-Base-T 2.0, or, you know, whatever they're including, we have the alliances, we have the adoption to it to make sure we're complying with it.
So do you guys think that the industry as a whole is really paying attention to what's going on here? I mean, we walk around the show floor.
No, not at all.
And that's the scary part. We're here in the DSC. We're in the digital signage room right now. And I walk around and I see all these little devices. And I'm an IT guy, and I do security and, you know, vulnerabilities and things like that. And it scares me. It scares the daylights out of me. All these devices that are going on the network with no checks and balances.
Correct.
Where do we go from here?
So and this is something that Paul and I talked about last year, along with some other really smart networking folks. And I have beat this drum for a year, and I'll continue to beat it until either somebody listens to me or somebody tells me to shut up. I honestly think that manufacturers, that Connect Pro and AMX and everybody else should adjust their releases. What I mean by that is, in the IT world, there is something called patches. They're security patches. These are not feature changes.
No.
A feature change is firmware. A security patch is not a firmware. But in the AV industry, for whatever reason, we still treat it as such. So when AMX finds a security issue, they're going to check. They're going to fix it, and then when they push it out, it's going to be labeled as firmware. And then it's going to be on the integrator to contact the client and say, hey, you know what? I have a firmware change that fixes some security issues. But here's the thing. You can't get 9 times out of 10, especially with high security clients, whether it's MasterCard or it's the government or it's DOD, telling them you have a firmware change isn't going to get you in the door. You know, especially, what does it do? You know, change the color or something? No.
it fixes a security update.
Right.
Well, then to call it a security update, to call it a security patch, because the DoD is more likely to let you back in that room that you can't take the USB drive in, and you can't, they put the tape over the webcam. If it's a security patch rather than a firmware update.
So that goes to Paul's point of, how are we notifying the customers, right? Because the adoption by specifically integrators, and I come from an integration background, they see the word firmware update, they get scared. Because it's like, okay, what are you going to break?
Exactly.
I spent all this time setting this thing up.
Or, everything's going to be smooth after the install, or you have to just reboot every time, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and some of that is architectural in the way embedded systems are developed. So this isn't a general purpose operating system like Windows or Linux that's got a lot of pieces. These are very stripped down, bare pieces, and when we ship a firmware update with or without security patches, we are shipping the entire operating system and every pieces of it. And that's really based on a legacy architecture of the way we've done business. So one of the things that we're looking at going forward is, can we start to separate out that operating system piece from the application piece and deal with those separately? So we have this operating system underneath that's set up, it can receive security patches and everything else, and then an application update is separate. Because right now, they very much have to lockstep just based on the way they chose to develop these things in 2004.
It's the nature of the embedded systems, right? And now we're starting to see the proliferation of, Ubuntu and other Linux variants that are being stripped down to do exactly what you're talking about, but we're not seeing a high adoption of it yet. And I look at, because some manufacturers are, so I looked at a piece last night from the Department of Homeland Security that they published at the end of last year, and it was basically a reference to manufacturers of, here are the things that you need to be paying attention to, from thermostats to PLC controls to digital signage players, whatever it may be. And I want to encourage people to where you were going with this, Paul. Don't be afraid to tell people, hey, there's a problem here. There's some integrity in that, saying that we're taking responsibility for this and we're fixing it.
Yeah, quite frankly, it's the right thing to do. And hiding mistakes is not a good long-term strategy.
Many politicians will tell you that.
And I'm very much the same way
The ones that get caught.
within security, is there are things our devices do and don't do within security as expected. And I've been implementing, and one of the reasons I'm leading this at Harman is because prior to coming to Harman, I was an integrator dealing mostly with DoD. So I've been dealing with AV systems into highly secure environments for a long time, where it was really hard. I like to say I spent so many years complaining about AV manufacturers, I finally decided to go fix one.
So you're saying Harman's broken?
Not anymore. He's worked there for.
Oh, there we go.
The entire industry is broken.
There we go.
It goes beyond that, and that's why I do so much work with Infocom, with education, writing standards, various other things that we're going through. We're talking about putting together a set of security standards that face towards best practices, but also provide documentation sets to customers as to how do you evaluate security. Because one of the big problems that integrators have is that the customers are handing them this 600 line spreadsheet where 450 of the lines aren't applicable at all, because it's not a computer, it's not a switch, it's not a router. How do they look at that? So part of this is educating the integrators. Okay, here's baseline security configuration, change the passwords, do blah blah blah, and then here's the techniques if they need to go above. And customers, here are appropriate things to analyze. We're not telling them how it has to be set up. We're just looking at saying, okay, here's an appropriate checklist for you to look at and decide what your needs are. And as far as that goes with disclosure and security, I'm not saying that all customers need to have super squirrel secret security and all the features, but my responsibility as an integrator would be to disclose what vulnerabilities or capabilities, and and quite frankly, if the customer makes a decision that's less secure than what I would want, it's their risk.
Right.
So in the traditional security model, I own the vulnerabilities and mitigations, but I don't own the risk, so I can put the value on what I do. Because this costs money, but you own the risk, and so you're weighing it out. So you're deciding how much you're going to spend. Because if you look at it, the exact same equipment, IP, HDMI over IP, could go in a boardroom of a mergers and acquisition bank and a sports bar. They don't have the same appropriate security configuration.
And it goes to the application,
Right.
And kind of what Cash is talking about here, making sure that from the hardware level we're addressing the applications and the security risk at that chip level, so that all we really have to deal with then is the operating system.
And I agree with him, at a point that education, best practice is great.
Right.
We got since the industry is broken, we have to either influence them, be as a leader, AMX has always been, and try to educate not only your customers but also the integrators and also other vendors.
Right.
Out there,
Right.
What they will lead by example.
Right.
Well, and right here is a prime example. I mean, the two of you here together discussing this, we need more of these discussions to take place.
I agree, yeah.
And I know we could sit here and discuss this all day long and dig deep. I know we got to wrap it up. So thank you, both of you, for coming.
Yes, thank you.
This has been a pleasure and a treat, and hopefully this message will penetrate some other manufacturers to pay attention to what's going on. So that's it for today at ISC 2017. Thank you for joining us at the ITAV show on AVNation.